Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect, and today we're going to make a golem. Or actually we are going to make my husband's spirit animal, but instead of stone we are sort of making it like dirt, so it's more like a dirt pile.
What are you calling me?
No, honey, I'm not calling you a dirt pile, I'm simply making...
What are you calling me?
I'm making a spirit animal for you. It's going to be great, darling.
Dirt pile.
Spirit animal, yes. It's going to be great, I promise ya. And I'm sure you're going to love it. So, without further ado, guys, let's get started. So first we're going to build up some armature for our little golem. Now, when I say first, it is, well, technically second, because I tried to make a golem before and as you can see, it didn't go as well. I was very frustrated. But I gave it another shot and now we are on with the new golem armature that I'm trying to make as sturdy as possible. And while I make our little pile of dirt, why don't I tell you a bit more about the golem? Though a quick disclaimer though, I am not an expert in myth or monsters or anything like that. I am just a girl with Google, so please don't come for me. But with that said guys, let me tell you about the golem. So the Native Americans gave us the Windigo. The Scottish people gave us the Loch Ness. And I have no count on how many monsters the Greek actually managed to give us. But now it's actually time for the Jews to step in. Yeah, the golem is actually a Jewish folklore monster. The goal is actually not as much as a monster and a creature as it was a tool to protect or destroy something. But to know how they were used and how they were made, we need to understand that there is something apparently called Kabbalah. I am probably butchering that word and for that my apologies. But this whole Kabbalah thing is so mysterious and so secretive, so it's actually pretty difficult to get the full aspect of what it's about. But for what I could gather, it is pretty much a secret school that use alchemy and sort of magic that is based on the Old Testament, on the borders to the occult, something like that. Or maybe it's nothing like that and I just misunderstood it all. I'm sorry guys, I really tried to dig deep into this. But they say if you dig too deep and read too much, it can cause insanity. So I was a little bit careful. What I have understood, however, is that it was a rabbi that made the first golem in order to protect his city. And as always, the golem sort of went rampage and started, murdering people. So he turned them off, so to speak, because they are more like robots than they are like creatures. And that's pretty much it. There is so much more to this ancient knowledge than what I'm telling you right now, and if you're interested, I am definitely encouraging you to look it up. But for now, let's focus on the golem. Because even though it started out in the Jewish folklore, just like werewolf and vampires and so on, it definitely didn't end there. If you have played any action type RPG game, then you probably have stumbled upon a golem or two that you had to defeat. And in those games, the golems can be of mud or dirt or rock or metal or clay. Pretty fittingly to my channel, in the old stories, the golems were actually always made out of clay. Though I have decided to turn mine into a dirt ground golem, and I am going to tell you a little bit later on why that is. Though for now, let's wrap up this golem lore business and turn our sights to the sculpture. Because in every golem story, and there are many, it all ends the same. The golem always get angry and all confused and destroy everything in his vicinity. And I actually don't blame them. In these stories, they are actually just animated objects without any souls and therefore without any conscience, so how were they supposed to act any differently? And that is when I started to play the what if game. What if the golem had a soul? What if the golem had a conscience? Now, how would those creatures act? What would they be like? And that is what I'm trying to sculpt today. Though I have to say I was pretty distracted. I have promised Mr. Clayfect when I reach 1,000 subscribers I will show my face, but that doesn't mean he's not trying to make me show my face a little bit earlier. What can I say? I'm a chunky, chubby woman that likes her cookies. But with that out of the way, now that I have built a pretty sturdy body up, I'm starting to give it some details. On this particular sculpture, I don't care if dimensions is completely perfect, if the foot is a little bit crooked and so on. I actually want that, because if I smooth it and make it too perfect, just like you saw with the back, then I have to go and ruin it because I want it to look like dirt. Which is also why you see me beating it with different kind of things, from aluminium foil to a big rock and down to a tiny rock, all to give this dirt texture I'm going for. Not taking into account that this is actually my second attempt and not my first. If you want to relax with clay, then making a golem definitely is a good answer for that, because you can't really make a mistake unless you're a perfectionist like me and get angry for like no reason. But with the golem baked for the first time, I start sanding his feet down simply to make sure that he could stand, and I think it was about this time I called him Grug. Well, actually it was Mr. Clayfect that named him Grug, which I think is pretty fittingly since it is his spirit animal. And why do I think my husband has a golem for a spirit animal? Well, let me tell ya. We all know that a personality is formed by a lot of factors. But two very important factors is the environment we grew up in and our genetics. And if we take that logic to the golems, then by default the clay and the ground golems shouldn't be that harsh because their environment is not that harsh. If you can follow my Clayfect logic here. Being created in a material where grass and flowers can grow, we can presume that they at least know how to respect nature. And therefore also have some sort of conscience about it. Just like we humans by instinct normally value human life above much else, so would the golems. Which would make them less like evil statues that goes on destroying everything, and more like a very tall, tough gardener. And as we all know with nature, as tough as this can be, it can also be very fragile, especially at the start of something new. So if we take that analogy through, we actually have some big gentle giants on our hands that don't want to destroy anything, but actually want to protect it. And maybe they are a bit clumsy about it, but I think they're gentle and kind-hearted when it comes down to it. And that is when I realized that I actually was making my husband's spirit animal. Because if you take Mr. Clayfect's charm away and his perfect first-hand impression that is so darn annoying, everybody likes that guy, then you pretty much just have a big, gentle brute with a very kind heart. That is his essence in my perspective. And even though Mr. Clayfect's intelligence is way higher than an Earth golem's, then I will still say it's close enough. Even though that he's a very tall and strong fella, let me tell ya, he can lift me. He would never hurt anyone on purpose, and he would never destroy anything. But that being said, Mr. Clayfect can also be a bit of a hothead. But he would never destroy anything that was precious to him. And the same goes for Grug. Which brings me to... Hi, my name is Clayfect, and apparently I make tiny nerdy flowers. Or one tiny nerdy flower, that is. I want to emphasize the gentle kindness of the sculpture, so that is why I decided to make a tiny little flower that is going to grow out of Grug's hand. Which is actually pretty evil of me, come to think of it, because knowing Grug, he will never close his hand around a tiny flower, so now he's just forced to run around with one open hand. But if you think about it, that's not the only evil thing I have done apparently, because in many video games, they actually need a human soul to make a golem. And since we have concluded that Grug is my husband's spirit animal, I don't know, maybe I just accidentally trapped my husband's soul into a sculpture. Or part of his soul, I don't know. The only way we were able to find out if I have done that is to find one of those Capital Masters and ask one of them. And those guys sound way too creepy and way too powerful for me to dabble in that. But just to be safe, if I am accidentally dabbling in some black magic, I will probably have to say to Mr. Clayfect that he needs to keep his sculpture safe and close to him. All jokes aside though, I am very happy about how Grug is turning out at this point. I just think he looks super cool with his earth dirt muscles and the texture. I'm just in love with it. He's not the most advanced sculpture and his face is sort of simple, but sometimes simple is just best in my opinion. I just love the contrast between the dirt texture and the softness of his expression that I have managed to make. I also used a lot of time on how I positioned the head and the hands. I wanted it to have sort of a double effect. So when you look at Grug, it looks like he's admiring the flower. But if you look at him straight in the eyes, then it actually looked like he's reaching out to give you the flower. I actually found that was a nice touch. Also with the hands that I'm sculpting now, I actually found them pretty difficult because I wanted them to be so large that I could make them and they would still make sense on the sculpture. Again, to emphasize the tiny fragile flower. The other hand that is not holding the flower, I sort of made relaxed, but a little bit closed. Again, to give him this kind expression, because one thing is expression, but the other thing is body language, and it really helps overall when you're creating a character. But with the hands on, I finally moved on to build a little more on the feet, simply because it wasn't sturdy enough and I wanted him to stand on just 2 legs. And I didn't want any sort of base under him. So that is why his feet are so big. But I actually think it works very well once that it gets its texture and its nails that I'm drawing in now. And with his hands and feet done, all I needed to do was to beat him some more with some rocks. And aluminium foil. And other tiny rocks. I just really had fun and relaxed with this sculpture. Not setting any sort of standard for myself, but just were in the sculpting process, so to speak. And with him finally textured enough, I started placing some tiny leaves in his hands before I put in the tiny flower. But with his tiny flower secure in his hand, it is finally time for his last bake before we get on with the painting. And you know what? I really did think that it was going to be easy this time with the painting. I made 4 variations of brown where there's some grey in it and some green in it, and then I just slapped it around and thought that would be it. But it definitely wasn't it. As you can see when I'm painting here, there is just not any dimension to it at all, and all my texturing is actually going to waste. And I was willing to ignore it until my lovely husband said, "Isn't it sad that you are not giving it some more shadows to bring out the texture?" And of course he was right. So I started dabbing him with some brown speed paint that I have taken a liking to if you have watched my latest videos, to bring out all the texture and hopefully giving him some more dimension. The only problem was though, as you can see, he did end up looking like pretty much a brown turd after that. So of course I had to remedy that by going back again with the same colors and giving it a very heavy dry brush. Only to decide that the texture didn't quite pop enough for my liking just yet. So I went in with an even lighter color on all the places and blended them in, finally making him sort of decent. And here you thought painting dirt would be simple, right? But with his space paint finally down and done, I started painting the small details. Painting his nails and his tooth in a light grey color before I move on to the flower. Now with the flower. Yeah, the flower. Oh my god. It was so tiny. I know I shouldn't complain because I sculpted it, but come on. It is smaller than my little fingernail. Come on. It drove me crazy. And I just really tried, but my eyesight is not the best. And I think it did turn out quite good, but oh my god, I was cursing and swearing at that little innocent flower. So much that a nun would have blushed and begged God to forgive me. But I took my time, and I am so glad that I did. I think the contrast between the flower and Grug makes all the difference. Well, almost all. Because after that, it was time to give our little Grug some grass. And I did that by gluing him up before I use my homemade grass applicator and just slightly dusted it around. Now, never make a homemade one because you can get electrocuted and it's dangerous. Don't do as I do, do as I say. But I have to say, it really just put the finish on the sculpture. And I am so very happy with how Grug came out. Though that being said, I think that is it for this sculpture and it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like little Grug. I am definitely a fan of him, and I still hope that I haven't trapped my husband's soul inside of this one. But if I have, then I'm proud of how it looks at least. Please consider like, comment and subscribe if you like what I do. And with that being said, guys, it is time for me to sign off. I hope to see you next time. But if you can wait until next time, why not click on this creative light? Then you're going to see another little monster get made. But until then, bye!